The evening had settled gently, soft and unhurried, like a slow breath after a long day. I found myself at my friend's house, nothing out of the ordinary on the surface, just a casual visit. But there was something about the way the fading sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a warm, golden haze over the living room, that made the air feel thick with quiet possibility. My friend was caught up with something else. An urgent phone call, maybe, so I lingered alone, my presence unnoticed for a few moments. That's when she appeared. His mom, moving through the room with a calm kind of grace, the kind that seemed effortless but carried years of stories beneath its surface. She was different than I remembered, more poised, her confidence settled like a soft cloak around her shoulders. Yet in her eyes, I caught a flicker of something more fragile, something quietly vulnerable. She looked up from arranging a stack of books on the shelf, her gaze landing on me with a calm curiosity that made my chest tighten just a little. The air between us felt suddenly charged. Though nothing was said, there was a pause, a silent exchange I wasn't quite ready to interpret. Her presence was warm, like the faint scent of lavender that seemed to trail behind her, mingling with the richer notes of aged wood and the faint musk of old paper. It was a scent that somehow wrapped around me like a secret. Then, without breaking eye contact, she stepped closer. Her hand reached out and brushed my shoulder, just a light, lingering touch. The sensation was electric and tender all at once, as if the weight of her fingers pressed a quiet question into my skin. The warmth of her hand seeped into me, steady and soothing, and I felt a subtle shiver run down my spine. Her voice came then, soft, almost a whisper, meant only for me. "If you stay a little longer," she said, her breath warm against my ear, "I'll show you something I've never shown anyone else." Her words hung in the air between us like a secret waiting to be uncovered. There was no pressure in them, only a gentle invitation, wrapped in mystery and something deeply intimate. I felt a surge of curiosity tangled with hesitation, 1,000 questions racing through my mind, none daring to voice themselves out loud. I glanced away for a moment, trying to steady the sudden rush of emotion. The room felt smaller somehow, as if we had folded into a private corner of the world where time slowed just for us. The quiet ticking of the clock was loud enough to hear, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat in that suspended moment. I looked back at her and noticed the slight softness around the edges of her smile, the way her eyes held a spark that went beyond friendliness or familiarity. It was a look that carried unspoken stories, promises of something rare and uncharted. And in that simple touch on my shoulder, in the quiet warmth of her voice, something shifted. The night had just begun, but I already knew that whatever she was about to show me, something she'd never shared with anyone else, would change everything. Her invitation hung in the air, fragile and compelling, like a delicate thread pulling me closer to something I didn't fully understand yet. After that brief touch on my shoulder and the whispered promise, the rest of the world seemed to soften and blur around us. I hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing gently on my chest. Part of me wanted to pull away, to retreat into the safe, familiar boundaries of friendship and ordinary evenings. But curiosity and something deeper, something quiet and aching, kept me rooted to the spot. "Stay a little longer," she said again, softer this time, her voice barely louder than the rustling of the curtains in the evening breeze. There was no urgency, no demand, only a quiet trust that felt as fragile as glass. I nodded, almost imperceptibly, and followed her without a word. The air between us shifted, as if the room itself had folded inward, sealing us off from the rest of the world. She led me to a smaller sitting room, tucked away behind a half-open door. The space was cozy, intimate, a private sanctuary lined with soft cushions, warm blankets, and shelves filled with well-loved books. The glow of a single lamp bathed everything in a golden, honeyed light that felt both soothing and electric. As we settled in, the silence stretched comfortably between us. I noticed the subtle details, the faint scent of vanilla and sandalwood that seemed to drift from her skin, the soft rustle of her silk blouse as she moved, the delicate way her fingers traced the edge of the armrest, as if grounding herself in this new closeness. She poured tea from a delicate porcelain pot, the clink of the cup against the saucer the only sound breaking the stillness. When she handed me the cup, our fingers brushed again, light, fleeting, but charged with something unspoken. The warmth from the tea seeped into my hands, but it was nothing compared to the warmth settling in my chest. Her eyes found mine, steady and inviting. There was no rush, no need to fill the silence with words. Instead, we let the quiet speak for us. In that pause, I felt an unspoken understanding settle between us, like we were both standing on the edge of something important, something that demanded patience and courage. I was acutely aware of the space between us, close enough to catch the faintest breath of her perfume, to see the tiny flicker of light catch in her eyes when she looked at me. Every small movement she made, the slow tilt of her head, the gentle curve of her lips as she smiled, felt like a secret shared just for me. And then, without a word, she reached out again, her hand resting briefly on my forearm. The contact was soft but deliberate, grounding me in the moment. Her skin was warm and smooth, and I could feel the subtle pulse beneath her touch, a quiet heartbeat that echoed my own. For a moment, everything else faded away. The worries, the hesitation, the outside world, all melted into the background. It was just us, suspended in a space where time slowed, and the possibility of something rare and beautiful quietly blossomed. I realized then that this wasn't just a casual visit anymore. It was the start of a private journey, one she was inviting me to take with her, and I wanted nothing more than to stay and see where it might lead. The quiet room felt like a refuge from everything else. The world outside dimmed and distant, like a muted dream. We sat there, the soft hum of the lamp casting warm circles of light around us, the delicate steam rising from our tea curling upward and fading into the stillness. She began to speak, her voice low and steady, threading through the silence like a soft melody. It wasn't a rehearsed story or something told to impress. It was something more fragile, something she kept folded away inside for years. With each word, I felt the weight of her life's hidden moments gently unfold before me. She told me about love and loss, about the dreams she once held tightly and the quiet moments where hope almost slipped away. Her hands moved slowly as she spoke, fingers tracing patterns on the edge of the cup, grounding her as she peeled back layers she had never shown anyone. There was a tremor in her voice when she spoke of old wounds, a delicate vulnerability wrapped in quiet strength. As she spoke, I was struck by how much I wanted to reach out, not just to comfort her, but to share in the trust she was offering. I leaned in, my gaze softening, letting her know I was there fully. No judgment, no expectations, just presence. The room felt charged with unspoken understanding. The way her eyes glistened in the gentle light told me she was offering a piece of herself I wasn't meant to take lightly. Her breath hitched briefly, and in that fragile moment, I dared to reach out, my fingers brushing gently against hers on the armrest. The touch was light, almost hesitant, but it spoke volumes. I'm here. You're not alone. The warmth of her skin beneath my fingertips was grounding, a steady pulse of life and emotion. It reminded me how rare moments like this were. Moments where barriers drop and two souls meet without masks or walls. I found myself opening up too, not with words at first, but in quiet presence. I wanted her to know she was safe to be vulnerable, to be seen in her entirety. The subtle rise and fall of her chest as she breathed, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the quiet night air seeping in through the window. It all created a cocoon around us, fragile yet fiercely protective. For a while, neither of us spoke. It was enough just to sit there, side by side, our hands still nearly touching. The silence became a space of trust, a gentle conversation without words. I noticed the softness in her gaze as it met mine, a quiet invitation to stay, to listen, to understand. I realized then that this was what she'd meant by something I've never shown anyone else. It wasn't a thing or a secret hidden away. It was the courage to be seen, to be raw and real, to let someone into the depths beneath the surface. And in that quiet shared space, I felt a shift, a gentle unraveling of the distance that had once separated us, replaced now by something tender, profound, and achingly human. The room was cloaked in a comfortable hush, the golden light wrapping around us like a soft embrace. After hours of quiet conversation and shared vulnerability, words began to feel both powerful and unnecessary. There was an unspoken language between us now, a delicate tension woven through the smallest gestures and lingering glances. I sat close enough to notice the way her breath caught ever so slightly when our knees brushed, the faintest shiver running through her as if she felt the same invisible thread pulling us together. The quiet warmth radiating from her was like a subtle fire in the cool evening air, inviting and steady all at once. Without thinking, she reached out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind my ear. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately, brushing against my skin with a softness that sent an unexpected thrill rippling through me. The touch was feather-light, almost reverent, as if she were afraid to break the fragile intimacy that had settled between us. Her hand lingered for a moment longer, tracing the line of my jaw with gentle care. I could feel the warmth of her skin against mine, the slight tremor beneath her fingertips, and the steady beat of her pulse vibrating quietly through that small connection. The world outside the room ceased to exist. It was just us, close, present, connected in a way I hadn't anticipated. Our eyes met, and in that gaze was an ocean of things unsaid. Desire, hesitation, hope, and 1,000 silent questions all swirled beneath the surface, waiting to be explored. I felt the rise and fall of her chest as she breathed, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the faint musk of the room, creating an intoxicating blend that seemed to settle deep inside me. For a moment, the space between us disappeared. Her fingers slipped from my jaw to rest lightly on my collarbone, her touch grounding and tender. The sensation was electric and soothing, a quiet affirmation that this connection was real, more than just words or chance meetings. I wanted to reach out, to close the gap completely, but held back, caught between fear and longing. Instead, I let my hand hover near hers, fingertips just shy of touching, savoring the charged stillness that held us suspended. The silence was thick but not heavy. It was a delicate dance of closeness, of two people navigating the fragile boundary between friendship and something more profound. Every small movement, the shift of a shoulder, the soft sigh that escaped her lips, spoke volumes about the trust and desire building quietly between us. In that moment, the world outside could have shattered, and I wouldn't have noticed. The only reality was the warmth of her hand resting gently on my skin, the subtle pulse beneath her touch, and the unspoken promise carried in the softness of her eyes. This wasn't just a touch. It was a conversation in its own right, one of longing, restraint, and the beautiful uncertainty of something new unfolding. And as her fingers slowly withdrew, leaving a lingering warmth in their wake, I knew that this moment would stay with me forever. The silent, tender language of touch that said more than words ever could. The room seemed to hold its breath, the soft glow of the lamp casting long, gentle shadows across the walls. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window pane, a steady rhythm that mirrored the tumult inside me. The quiet sanctuary where we sat felt suddenly fragile, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something to break the silence. I took a deep breath, the warmth of her hand still lingering faintly on my skin. My mind raced, tangled with thoughts I hadn't dared to voice before. The age between us, the unspoken boundaries of social expectations, the quiet fears of what might be lost or found. All these shadows hovered just beneath the surface. Yet, beneath the hesitation, there was a truth I could no longer hold back. My voice was low, almost hesitant, as I finally dared to speak the feelings that had taken root in my heart. I don't know how to say this without sounding reckless, but I think I've been feeling something for you, for a while now. She looked at me then, her eyes searching mine, reflecting a complex swirl of emotions. Surprise, uncertainty, but also a glimmer of hope. Her breath caught softly, and for a moment, words seemed unnecessary, as if the space between us was already filled with what neither of us dared say aloud. I know there's an age between us, I continued, my voice steadier now, and maybe it's complicated, but when I'm with you, it feels different, like I'm seeing something real, something worth exploring, even if it's hard. Her fingers trembled slightly as they reached for mine, the touch both grounding and electrifying. The pulse beneath her skin was steady, yet I could sense the weight of her own fears and desires, carefully balanced on the edge of that moment. Her eyes glistened in the soft light, and she spoke quietly, her voice thick with emotion. I've carried so many doubts, too. I wondered if this was just a fleeting thing, something that shouldn't be. But when you're here, it feels like a truth I can't ignore. The silence that followed was heavy but not suffocating. Instead, it was charged with the fragile hope of two souls daring to step beyond what was safe, to acknowledge something deeply human and real. I felt my heart quicken, not just from the fear of what might come, but from the relief of finally speaking aloud the feelings that had lived quietly in the shadows. Her presence beside me was steady, a comforting anchor in the swirling uncertainty. We sat there, hands entwined, the rain still falling softly outside, each drop a reminder of cleansing, renewal, and the unknown paths ahead. In that quiet, fragile moment, we faced the truth, not just of what we felt, but of what we might become if we chose to embrace it. There was hesitation, yes, but beneath it, a burgeoning hope, a promise that this confession was not an ending, but the first step towards something rare and beautiful. And as our eyes met again, filled with a silent understanding, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, this truth would be our foundation. A truth born in shadows, now stepping slowly into the light. The moment felt suspended between hesitation and courage, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for us to decide whether to step forward or retreat. The soft hum of the night outside pressed gently against the quiet inside the room, the faint rustle of leaves and distant city sounds fading into the background. Her hand still rested lightly in mine, warm and steady, grounding me in this fragile space between what was familiar and what was new. Our fingers intertwined, each subtle squeeze carrying the weight of unspoken promises and tentative hopes. We both knew that crossing this invisible line, the boundary between friendship and something more, would change everything. The world outside would look different. Our pasts, our fears, the whispers of doubt. They all pressed in, but in this quiet moment, none of it seemed as important as the soft pulse of connection that thrummed between us. Her eyes held mine with a vulnerability that matched my own, a silent plea that said, "Are you ready?" I felt the thrum of my own heartbeat, quickened by a mix of anticipation and the delicate ache of uncertainty. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she leaned closer, the warmth of her breath brushing my cheek like a whispered secret. The scent of her perfume, the subtle mix of vanilla and something woodsy, timeless, enveloped me, stirring a quiet longing deep within. My hand rose to gently cup the side of her face, thumb brushing softly along her cheekbone. The skin beneath my touch was warm, a soft glow that seemed to pulse with life and emotion. The world narrowed to this small connection, this perfect moment suspended in time. She closed her eyes briefly, leaning into the touch, and for a heartbeat, the space between us vanished. The night air, the soft lighting, the hum of the world outside, all faded into nothingness. There was no rush, no need to force what was happening. Instead, we allowed ourselves to linger on the edge of this new territory, savoring the tenderness that came with stepping into the unknown together. Her hand tightened around mine, a silent affirmation of trust. I could feel the slight tremble in her fingers, a mix of excitement and the familiar flutter of nerves. It was the beautiful uncertainty of something beginning, fragile yet filled with promise. We stayed like that, close and still, the gentle rhythm of our breaths blending into a quiet harmony. It was a crossing not just of physical proximity, but of emotional vulnerability, a step toward embracing the unknown, with all its risks and rewards. In that moment, I realized that the invisible line was not a barrier to fear but a gateway to possibility. We were no longer just two people in a room. We were two souls beginning to intertwine, daring to explore the delicate dance of trust and desire. As the night deepened, so did our quiet connection. It was a beginning, not defined by grand gestures or loud declarations, but by the soft, steady courage to reach out, to hold on, and to move forward together into whatever might come. The night had deepened, but the room still glowed softly, the gentle light casting a tender warmth over everything it touched. The quiet hum of the world outside seemed distant now, replaced by the steady rhythm of our breathing and the soft thrum of a new connection that had blossomed between us. After crossing that invisible line, everything felt different, but in the most natural, unforced way. There was no rush to define what this meant or to label the feelings that had grown between us. Instead, we simply existed in the shared space we had created. A space filled with quiet understanding, gentle touches, and the unspoken promise of more to come. She rested her head lightly against my shoulder, her breath warm and steady against my skin. I could feel the subtle rise and fall of her chest, the softness of her hair brushing against my neck. Her fingers found mine again, weaving into a comforting grasp that spoke of safety and trust. The hesitation that had once fluttered between us was now replaced by a calm certainty, a quiet acknowledgement that what we had found was rare and worth cherishing. It wasn't about grand declarations or dramatic turns. It was about the small, intimate moments, the brush of a hand, the lingering glance, the gentle squeeze that said, "I'm here." In that peaceful silence, I thought about all the invisible barriers we had faced, the age between us, the unspoken doubts, the fears of judgment. But none of those things mattered now. They had faded into insignificance, replaced by the warmth of genuine connection. She lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes reflecting a softness that made my chest tighten. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet gratitude, "for staying, for seeing me." I smiled, feeling the fullness of the moment settle deep inside me. "I'm glad I stayed," I said, my voice steady, "because this feels like the beginning of something real." We talked then not about the future or the challenges ahead, but about the present moment, the here and now, about how rare it was to find someone who truly understood you, who could hold your vulnerabilities without breaking. The hours slipped by unnoticed as we shared stories, laughter, and comfortable silences. The connection between us grew stronger, not through grand gestures, but through the everyday tenderness that comes from being truly seen and accepted. Eventually, the night gave way to dawn. The soft light of morning spilled through the windows, painting the room with a gentle glow. We stayed close, reluctant to break the fragile spell that had woven us together. I realized then that this was no longer just my friend's mom, the woman who had quietly touched my shoulder and whispered a secret. She was something more, a partner in a journey that neither of us fully understood yet, but were willing to explore together. As the new day began, so did our story, a slow, steady unfolding of trust, affection, and hope. It was a beginning shaped not by age or expectation, but by the simple truth of two hearts finding their way to each other. And in that warm, quiet morning light, I knew we had found something rare, a love born from patience, honesty, and the courage to embrace the unknown. If you've ever experienced a quiet moment that changed everything, or felt the delicate pull of a connection that surprised you, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let's talk about those unexpected moments that stay with us. And if you enjoyed the slow burn story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. There are many more heartfelt stories waiting to unfold. Thanks for sharing this journey with me.